Mike, you're at Imperial College Business School today to give your inaugural lecture as adjunct professor. I wonder if you could perhaps share with me now some of the key messages that you're going to be bringing to your audience this evening.
Yes, I think in general the talk is really about lessons learned over the course of the last year, but really a compilation of experience over 30 years in technology. So essentially we call it a year in the life of innovation. So Microsoft has been very much involved in thinking through how it can become more innovative, both in terms of technology and new business models. So as part of that exploration, tonight's talk will discuss the role of innovation, not just at Microsoft, but rather some 200 companies, global companies in many cases, that we work with and have been working with over the course of the last 5 years, and specifically what lessons we have learned about everything from corporate culture and how it influences innovation, but also both failures and successes based upon leadership and innovation. And I think that's really an important point. So not only are we going to be talking about some of those lessons and kind of boiling it down, so to speak, to 5 or 6 key themes, but we're also going to talk about some of the leadership involved in a few case examples of real companies and what they've gone through and struggling with the whole notion of how does one actually do innovation. So that's really what the topic of tonight's conversation is about.
Obviously, I know it's going to be quite a long lecture and we've only got a few minutes, but if you were able to distill maybe a couple of the key messages that you will be delivering tonight, what would they be?
Well, certainly one of the key messages is that regardless of how brilliant an innovation strategy might be, corporate culture and corporate behavior trumps innovation strategy every time. There isn't an exception to it. And unless one takes in consideration the corporate attributes and value systems that are already in place, usually in organizations that quite frankly do not necessarily want to change, unless you take that in consideration, it is very difficult to engage in any kind of innovation strategy development and have success with it. Innovation in and of itself is a rather difficult process to undertake. When you layer on corporate culture and the environment in which you're in, it becomes even more challenging. So you have to think about what innovation you want to do in the context of your corporate value system and your corporate culture. Another major lesson that we're learning through a lot of these experiences, sometimes through hardship as well as through victory in some of the battles that we're fighting, is that leadership is absolutely instrumental. How leadership in a company approaches the problem of innovation is really important. So we're going to talk a little bit about Apple and Steve Jobs and some of the other models that we've seen firsthand, and also what Bill Gates has experienced in terms of thinking about innovation within Microsoft. So I think it's going to be a rather interesting discussion.
And in terms of the lessons that you have learned, what's the next step? You've got this information, which is obviously very relevant to companies. How do you then take this on?
Well, we're going to show very real examples and to illustrate our point. So we're going to talk a bit about some of the innovation processes inside of Microsoft, both those who have been successful and those who have been less successful, and why. And then we're going to talk about a unique program called the Innovation Outreach Program. And it's unique in a sense because it's the first time that we've really tried an outside-in approach to innovation, where we start with an industry leader with their problems in their industry, looking out 3 to 5 years to tackle a strategic problem of interest, and then work backwards to figure out if we can actually design a new technical architecture and business model to deliver it. It's a very intriguing prospect because you're starting with an idea and you're trying to then figure out concrete ways of being able to produce a solution that will address that problem. And you're doing it cooperatively, so you're actually bringing in the industry partner right at the beginning of the innovation process. And so both companies are starting literally together to try to approach a problem. And even if you don't actually come up with a solution, just the mere process of engagement itself has produced amazing results for us in terms of thinking about our technical architectures and what we really think should be a priority within the company.
And you talked about the outreach program. Obviously, Imperial College is very much involved in that. Mm-hmm. I mean, what role are they playing, and how important is that?
Well, we searched high and low for a university partner that we think would be appropriate to engage with our other companies in the Innovation Outreach Program as well as with Microsoft. And we had amazing response. We had 8 world-class universities, including universities like Stanford and others, that we talked to, Cambridge, Oxford here in England, and Manchester, and other universities. And we finally decided that Imperial was the right university choice to be part of the program. The criteria was really the cooperation that we saw between the business school as well as the engineering and science schools here that you don't see at some other universities. Of course, it is world class. We would choose no less than that, so the university's reputation precedes itself. But there's another aspect of this. A lot of university activity involving innovation is very conceptual. I would call it highly academic. You don't get much in the way of real practical, real-world result. And the difference here is that you have an investment fund. You have £600 million invested in Imperial Ventures. And so you have a practical incubation center where concept has to actually result in real-world growth, revenue opportunity. We found that to be a very compelling model. And the fact that there's such close cooperation between engineering and business was really the key reason why we decided to do that, and your leadership as well, including that David Gann and David Begg in this process. They're really amazing leaders. And so we thought that would be a great benefit. And that's proven after a year of working with each other to be a tremendously productive relationship.
Mike, Steve, thank you very much.